awesome. All right. So today we're going to be, and I said thanks for the prayer as well. So we're going to be looking at the action plan, the guiding principles, and just simply how those connect to you creating your e-portfolio. All right, I am seeing a hand. Is that a question?
Yes, please, it's a question. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm not able to see my chat up on my Zoom page. Is it that it is disabled?
Yes,
that's correct.
It is disabled, yes.
Okay.
We're going to be using the raise hand feature. And
okay,
in the room. I'm going to be making you, I'm going to be closing the mics. So I'm going to be making I'm going to make you co-host. I'm going to assign some assistance to the room for the raise hand feature.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and thank you too. All right.
Oh, God.
Okay, so now we're going to jump right into the presentation. So I like to start presentations with a quote, my lessons with a quote as well. And this is a fitting quote for what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a quote from Benjamin Franklin: "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." And as teachers, we know the importance of planning and preparation when we go to our lessons. And so I just want to remind you of this quote because I'm sure you've seen it a lot of times. What are we going to be covering in this session? We're going to be looking at what an action plan is, creating SMART goals, which we are pretty much aware of already, the importance of an action plan, some key points, and just outlining its importance, and the different templates that we can use to create our action plan, as well as how the action plan relates to the guiding principles, our e-portfolio, appraisal, and ultimately our development. Now, I believe some of us, or most of us, if not all, would have been aware of what an action plan is already. So we would have been asked to prepare action plans for each. We would have been asked to prepare action plans. I believe some of us would have. And so it's really just putting a plan forward. You identify your big goal, ultimately looking at the steps that you need to take to achieve this goal. And as Amanda stated, it's really just a checklist, a plan. It's really just a plan or checklist for the steps or tasks you need to complete in order to achieve the goals that you have set. So it's very comprehensive, very detailed, and showcases the ability for you to track progress and evaluate your performance. So that's ultimately what the action plan is. Ms. Holmesley, you have a question? Holmesley, you have a question? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Okay. All right, so we are familiar with the acronym, the SMART, right, which is used when we are setting or designing our objectives for our lessons. It's the same SMART that we talk about when we look at our action plan. So we know that our goals have to be very specific, well-defined and clear, know exactly what you want to accomplish. Looking at it from a measurable perspective, how do you track progress? And then make sure these goals are attainable, realistic in achieving them, looking at the resources that you have, the time that you have, the experience that you have in order to achieve such goal or goals if it's more than one. And of course, making sure that your goals for your action plan are relevant and it's timely, because goals really don't stretch to infinity. And so we have to make them time bound. So we know that we're working towards a specific date or deadline. Now, why do we need to create this action plan? Ultimately, it helps with our instructional goals, and that helps with our communication, ensuring quality assurance when we compare or communication skills previously versus after doing an action plan? How does it improve on that? How does it help with lesson planning, student engagement? How does it help with lesson delivery? Are you facilitating inclusive education? How does it relate to your classroom practice, your personal and educational philosophy, the strategies that you use in your classroom? So ultimately, your action plan will guide all of this. If it is that you want to improve on communication, it could be yours, it could be your students' communication, or just overall as a staff. You can look at it from students' engagement perspective, which is something that a lot of us find challenging in the online space right now, keeping our students engaged. So we could create a plan around student engagement. How do we foster each student's growth and development, looking at diversity, inclusive education? And of course, what strategies do we want to improve on in our classroom practice? How does our guiding philosophy, both personal and educational, how does that help you in delivering your lesson? So putting it all on paper, creating a plan. Now, these are the key points from an action plan. That these are some of the reasons we ought to do an action plan, or you are encouraged to do or prepare an action plan. You have a clear sense of direction, and in having a clear sense of direction, you can increase your motivation, because sometimes we get demotivated. And I'm speaking from my own experiences. There are times when we do get demotivated as educators, but having a clear direction, knowing exactly where you want to go, the goals you want to achieve, timely reminders, sometimes it sparks back that motivation. And in sparking back that motivation, it helps us to stay committed. And in staying committed, we have to make sure that we make sure the goals that we set are smart, right? And in setting those goals that are smart, it helps us to stay on track, keep a tab on where we are, noticing what our progress is. And then that can help us to prioritize. And once we prioritize, we can then look at do a SWOT analysis, which we'll talk about in a bit. Looking at the obstacles, what can prevent you from achieving these goals? What are your alternatives? Then in identifying all of that, you can boost your productivity because you're motivated, you're committed. You have your actions planned out in steps, bite sizes. So you're not trying to jump at the goal one big leap. You're actually taking small steps to get to that goal, which helps you to keep focused. Know that you are focused, your planning becomes a lot more strategic. And because your planning becomes a lot more strategic, then you are guaranteed to have growth, whether it's your own growth as an individual, the growth of your students or other colleagues or those you may interact with. All right, I'm seeing a hand. Go ahead. Is it Chanel? Chanel?
Hi, good day. I was asking if you would be able to put the session live on YouTube, because some of my teachers would like to join the session, but your room is at capacity.
Mrs. Wilmot?
We will make the recording available afterwards.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Wilmot. All right. So these are just some key points that will help us when we actually create our action plan. And a lot of us want to stay committed. We want to be motivated. We want to grow. And an action plan is one way we can use that. Now, when you actually go to create your action plan, what are some of the things that you need to consider when creating your action plan? There are 6 key components. Okay, so the first one, as we have established with the SMART goals, making sure that you are very clear on the goals you want to achieve. So it may take some reflection for you to really consider what is it that is of importance. What do I need to achieve at this time or by this time? Then you look at component number 2. You identify your goal. What are the steps that you need to carry out to achieve this goal or these goals that you have set? Then you move further by looking at it to say, am I the person responsible independently for this goal? Do I need other persons on board? Who else would be responsible for the achievement of these goals or such a task? So you have to be very clear on whose responsibility it is to achieve the goal. If you're working on a collaborative action plan as a department, or just as subject teachers working on the same subject, you can plan together. So who is responsible for which task, etc. Then we look at component number 4. When do you need to complete these small steps by? As we said before, goals don't stretch to infinity. So you must have a deadline or a timeline so that you can track your progress. Now, in achieving all these goals, we also need to look at the resources that we need for the completion or achievement of these goals. Do I need worksheets? Do I need technological resources? Do I need pencils, pen, etc.? What are the resources that you need? Do you need to go to a workshop? Is it that you need to go to a professional development training? What resources do you need to complete the goal? Then finally, you need to have processes or things in place to track your progress, evaluate your growth. Have you moved to the place that you want to move? If your goal, for example, was to move students' comprehension strategies from 50% to 80%, how far are you, or how close are you to that 80? So you have to now quantify, which is why it should be measurable, knowing exactly what you want to achieve. All right, are there any questions at this time? Are we good? Are we okay? All right, it seems that way. Okay, great. Maria has a question, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
In your SMART goals, in these action plans, would you take the children into consideration, the students into consideration? And if that, would you allow them to be a part of the planning of putting all of this together?
You can. So an action plan where I'm just looking at the facets and the components of it, but certainly, as I said, it could be a collaborative effort. So if it's an action plan for your department, you could work around it in that sense. If you have an action plan for your students, this most certainly can be involved in the process. And it leads for them to be more accountable and more responsible. So involving them in the process, I would 100% tell you to do that if it's something to do with your class. Yes. All right, any other questions? Okay. Now, the action plan, you can use any action plan template and tailor that, personalize it to whatever goals you want to achieve. Whether you're in general education or special education, education is education, right? But you must be very clear on what you want to achieve. Here I have a simple template, which is one that I have used before, but it's not the only template that I have used. So here it gives you the opportunity to identify the big goal, the different steps that you need to take. You can always add more or remove these steps if you don't need that many. You look at the person responsible for the goals or each action. You look at the resources that you need, as we mentioned. What is the benchmark? Where are you currently at? When do you want to achieve this goal by, or these goals, or these tiny steps? And then how do you know that you have gotten there, or how close are you to that goal? So what's the evidence of improvement? And of course, you could change these markers to something more personal. It doesn't have to be what's here. Okay, I'll get to you in a little bit, Mrs. Plummer. All right, and then here I have another template, so you can organize it, what needs to be done by when, the resources. So this is the implementation process, and I've put a little example here. The objective, of course, can be a lot more specific than it is right here. Training is one thing. If you want to improve students' comprehension strategies, as an educator, first, you have to know, identify your needs as an educator. What are some of the things you need to do independently to facilitate this improvement in the students. So you can look at it from the perspective of engaging in training, by when you want to complete your training, what is it that you need to do, if you need to seek mentorship, seek workshops or professional development opportunities. Those are the implementation steps. When you look at the evaluation steps, you now look at your lesson plan design. Is it improved? What are some of the notes you would have taken from the seminars? What are some resources that you would have put together? Right? How do you document this evidence? An e-portfolio, which is what we're promoting and emphasizing as it relates to evidence. So everything that you would have collected at these workshops and seminars, all the information you'd have garnered, you can put that together in an e-portfolio as your evidence that would have been documented. All right. Then after you go through your training, the next step could be to engage students in the new strategies that you would have garnered. Again, what's the duration or completion date for this particular goal or step? What are the resources that you need? You would know what you need. You know your students, lesson plans, web conferencing tools, comprehension passages, etc. You would know what you need. Then how do you know that they are improving? Clearly, you can use assessment, whether it's formative, summative, problem-based learning, project-based learning, whatever the assessment is. You can also look at your evaluation or feedback. So give students an opportunity to evaluate the lesson, ask them for their feedback. Also, if your HOD, if it's not around the time for your check-ins, you could ask another colleague to just sit in on your lesson if they're available, give you feedback so you really know if it's working or not from their perspective. So you have to get a very wide view, not just a myopic view from your perspective, but more like a triangulation component. Yourself, your view, the student's view, and your colleague's view, whether it's your HOD or somebody else. And then how do you actually document this evidence? Again, your e-portfolio. But what would you put in your e-portfolio? Data analysis. What are you analyzing? The grades prior to the use of the strategy, the grades after the use of the strategy. You evaluate that, you analyze that. Is the strategy or are the strategies working? And then of course, your e-portfolio is where you can showcase that you have tried these strategies, these are my results. So you speak from an evidence-based perspective instead of just a theoretical perspective. I'll take the question now. Go ahead, Mrs. Plummer. Sinclair Plummer. Not hearing you. Not hearing you. We're not hearing you. I'm not sure what is happening. Can you unmute and try again?
I would suggest that you move on, Mrs. Burrell, and then come back.
Okay. All right. No problem. Are there any other questions though? No? All right. Okay. So where can you get templates for your action plan? So you can use creately.com. Creately.com is a general platform that has action plans for businesses, marketing, education, you name it. And whichever ones they have, you can always edit it and personalize it. Or you could use the one provided by the Ministry of Education, which is pretty similar, right? You can color code it, you can do whatever you need to do with it. And most schools would have this available as well. So you put in all your necessary details here, the major task, the output, what you expect to achieve, your resources that you require, by when you want to achieve these, the actual results, and then any comments or suggestions that you want to put here. So these are templates that you have available. All right. Now, we spoke about SWOT analysis earlier when you identify the obstacles that can prevent you from achieving some of your goals. And of course, what's your alternative? Now, SWOT analysis is not something that's new to any of us, but most certainly we can do SWOT analysis of our individual selves, but how does it relate to our action plan? What are your strengths that will help you to achieve the goals and objectives of your action plan? What's the strength of this action plan? What's your weakness that will affect or can affect the achievement of the goals? What's the weakness of the action plan itself? We look at opportunities. What are some of the opportunities that can arise from this action plan? What are some threats? What will prevent or can prevent the completion of your action plan or the achievement of the goals in your action plan? So it's always good to do SWOT analysis of any task at all that you do, not just an action plan. All right. So we're going to be looking at how all of this fits into the guiding principles and our ePortfolio. So there are 6 guiding principles that we use to create our ePortfolio, and these are the same 6 guiding principles that we find on our appraisal document. So the first guiding principle speaks to the teacher being knowledgeable of the subject that he or she teaches. The second guiding principle talks about knowing how to teach the subject for which you are responsible. Guiding principle 3 speaks to you being committed to the children in your care, fostering inclusive education diversity. Guiding principle number 4 talks about sharpening your professional skills. Whether you attended a seminar or you are conducting the seminar, pretty much how you improve on your professional skills. Guiding principle number 5 talks about your interaction with communities and parents, so the different stakeholders. How do you engage them? And finally, guiding principle number 6, how do you conduct yourself to uplift the profession? So these are the 6 guiding principles that we will explore in this week. I will zone in primarily on guiding principles 1 and 2 today, while for the rest of the week, we look at the other guiding principles. So for guiding principle number 1, we have different things that we can showcase in our ePortfolio for guiding principle number 1. So when we look at GP1, which is the short for guiding principle, you include your action plan in guiding principle number 1, and I'll show you my portfolio in just a bit with guiding principle 1 and 2. So you can include your action plan, which we just spoke about, how to create your action plan, the things that you put in it. For this particular principle, you also look at samples of students' work. You look at your lesson plans. You look at behavior modification techniques. So what's your classroom behavior plan? What are some of the strategies that you use in your classroom? How do you integrate other subjects to bring forth or reinforce a point? So for example, if it is that you are teaching soils, for me in biology, in ecology, in geography, they look at soils as well. So how can I make the connection with geography and biology? If I'm looking at cells and the history of cells, how can I integrate history in my lesson? So it's pretty much, and a lot of us do that. We do that as teachers, but do we really document that as our evidence that we do it? A lot of us are doing so much work, excellent work, but there's nothing to show for it. This is the opportunity for us to showcase what we have been doing, turn a different light on the education system. Right? So how do you keep abreast of the knowledge in your content area? We're living in a digital age, and it will get even more digital as we go forward. How do you keep your content up to date? How do you evaluate yourself, your lessons? What are some of the things that you work on to improve? How do you give students feedback? How do you support their development? So you can showcase work that you would have graded. So you can look at what is deemed as the best quality and those that need improvement. What kind of feedback do you give to students on those pieces of assessment? These are things, samples of those things you can place in your ePortfolio under guiding principle number 1. How do you showcase resources that you would have developed? A lot of us prepare PowerPoints for our students. We create worksheets, we create lab manuals, whatever it is that you design, any resource that you have developed, it's your work. of course, with appropriate referencing. It's your work. You prepared this document. These are things that you can include in guiding principle number 1. How do you support students' emotional intelligence? What are some of the things that you do to support that? These are things that you include in guiding principle number 1. How do you integrate technology in your lesson? Those are things you can include as well. If you have held different positions during your tenure, your tenure as an educator, you can showcase that in guiding principle number 1 as well. What are some of the responsibilities, roles and responsibilities that you had? What are the different capacities that you served? So you can look at all of those for guiding principle number 1. When we look at guiding principle number 2, that is really showcasing how you teach the subject. So everything that you would have documented in guiding principle number 1, your teaching strategies, your competence and all the different things students work, now is the opportunity to see how you put that into practice. So what are some of the ways that you communicate with your students? Do you use the instructional media? This is where we can see how it is used. You showed us that you have used it. This principle actually allows you to prove that you are competent in using it. So if I say that I like to focus on explorative learning or experiential learning, where is the evidence for that? In this particular principle, you can showcase all those strategies or most of the strategies that you mentioned. How do you promote civics education? It's no longer taught as a subject. It's now infused in our everyday action. So whatever we do in the classroom must match back to the Vision 2030 or national standards and goals, right? So how do you ensure that you promote all of that in your classroom? Do you engage in reflective teaching? Are you a researcher? You realize a problem. What have you done about it? How do you integrate your philosophy, your personal and professional educational philosophy? How does that come out in your lesson? How do you ensure that students' confidence, how do you build their confidence? How do you support them? How do you ensure collaboration is taking place? These are different things that you can showcase in guiding principle number 2. All right. So I will not be zoning in on 3, 4, 5, and 6 because these are principles that we will explore later on. So I will take the time now to look at the ePortfolio. Okay. So what exactly is your ePortfolio? Your ePortfolio is really is really your evidence of the work that you have been doing. It's documenting your growth over time, looking at your commitment, your competency, pretty much looking at you as a whole, as an individual. You are your brand. You represent the work that you do. So again, it's all about making sure there's evidence for the things you say you do. All right. So when we design our ePortfolio, we have to make sure that we engage in 4 major processes, not limited to, but certainly inclusive. Reflecting, you have to reflect when you create your ePortfolio. You look at the different pieces of artifacts that you will collect. You look at selecting the ones that match up to the principles. And then, of course, connecting all of that, networking, using the portfolio to your advantage, stepping out, branching out. Because the truth is, that's the direction in which we're going. And internationally, if you should apply for different jobs, they want to see the work that you have been doing instead of scrambling to scan and go and find this and find that. It would have all been organized in your ePortfolio. And with the nature of COVID too, persons might just be hesitant to touch anything for anybody. So having a physical portfolio might just not be the way to go at this time. So putting it all together digitally helps you to organize yourself a lot more. So connecting it all together, all the guiding principles, as I mentioned before, those are in relation to your appraisal document. The action plan is required to be in guiding principle number 1. It's something that is necessary for your growth and pretty much achieving mastery. And ePortfolio development is linked to your appraisal, but not limited to your appraisal. It's a way to track your progress and look at your growth over time. Are there any questions before I jump over to the portfolio to show you some of the things that I included in mine for GP1 and 2? Any questions so far? Everybody's clear? Go ahead, Alison.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I would just like to find out if it is that every school or every academic year, we would have to create a new e-portfolio, or we can add each year as we go along.
Good question. It's one e-portfolio you just add as you go along, of course, with appropriate labels to say these, like I'd say for your lesson plan in particular, you have to just let us know that these lesson plans are for academic year 2019, 2020, and then you update as you go along and you just make sure you separate them. So we don't have to be figuring out and jumping all over the place. Everything is well labeled and identified. It's one e-portfolio. You keep updating it as you grow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I've often heard persons asking this question as it relates to submission of the lesson plans. Do you add all your plans or samples of plans for each subject per term?
All right, so it's all your plans. Let me go back to one. So lesson plans for all grades and subjects taught. So if I teach first form and I teach second form, fifth form as well, I need to upload all my plans for the academic year for first form, for second form, and fifth form. Okay, does that clarify everything for you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very clear.
Tamara, go ahead. Tamara, can you hear me? Michelle, go ahead.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Now, my question is, I have done e-portfolios before at wikis, but as individuals now projecting the way forward with e-portfolios, is it left to the individual to find a site that will accommodate it?
All right, that's a good question. So it is recommended, we're not forcing you, it is recommended for you to use Google Sites, given the fact that a lot of our communication is done through the G Suite application. So it's recommended to use Google Sites, and I will be showing you how to set that up in just a bit. Okay, Michelle, got that? Okay, go ahead, Lorna.
My question is, this document seems to be a very comprehensive one. So for persons like myself and others who have been lagging behind where technology is concerned, what time frame are we given to put all of these documents together from an administrative perspective?
When you say timeline, as in as a principal or in the capacity of a teacher? Because it's a work in progress. It's not stagnant. It's not something that you rush and compile in one day. You constantly add to your portfolio as you grow and develop. So it's showcasing the work that you have done, organizing it based on the guiding principles. And I'll show you that in just a minute after I take the last question. Okay. So I can't say there's a set timeline. If it is that you want to apply for master teacher, then you will have a deadline for sure to submit this by, which will be communicated at the master teachers meeting. However, as an individual teacher or administration, you encourage your teachers or the teachers to work on their e-portfolio. It's an ongoing process. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Dorcia, go ahead. Darcia, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In a situation where lesson plans are shared within a grade, do we just modify and include that in our portfolio? How would you advise us including a shared lesson plan or shared lesson plans?
Most certainly. So that's the way forward, and a lot of departments are doing that. So one teacher will do lesson plans for a particular grade level, etc. It is a plan that you have used, so certainly it would be counted as a part of your compilation of lesson plans. So you're not asked to do a separate lesson plan if that's the plan that you have used. It's still your lesson plan. You just need to label it accordingly to the grade levels and subject. All right. Crystal, go ahead. I might not be able to take all the questions, so I'll go until 2:45. So go ahead, Crystal.
Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. I have two questions. One, I have never done an e-portfolio, so would I need to upload all of my old lesson plans to it now that I'm starting? And the second question is, will we be provided with a printout or a rubric of everything that we need, or a checklist with the information we need to have in this e-portfolio?
All right, so there is a document. I am going to, when the recording is being posted, you can also find everything that you need regarding ePortfolio and appraisal on the JTC's website. They have all the documents listed there. So you can definitely access the information from the JTC's website regarding the guiding principles, what you need to have, how it links to your appraisal, all those documents are there. As it relates to your first question about lesson plans, as I said, the process of creating your e-portfolio deals with reflection, collection, selection. So we're not asking you to go and dig up for lesson plans from way back 2009 for argument's sake. However, if you had great lessons that you used in the past and you want to use those as samples, most certainly you can add them. But we're not asking you to go back and dig up for anything that you might not know where it is right now. We just want you to know that you document your work. So organize your lesson plans based on the academic year they were used, and you can upload them if you so desire. But if you plan to use, if your e-portfolio is going to be used as your appraisal sample, the evidence for your appraisal, then you would need to have the most current academic year that this appraisal is going to be done. So if I'm being appraised in 2021, I know that my lesson plans on the e-portfolio must be for the academic year 2020, September 2020 to June or July 2021. So you have to know how to organize your lesson plans based on your preference. But if it is an appraisal file, you must have the most current academic year uploaded. All right, so Denise, go ahead. Go ahead, Denise. All right, Mrs. Chambers-Squire, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was unable to unmute a while ago.
Okay, go ahead.
So good afternoon, colleagues. My question is, I understand the e-portfolio and how comprehensive it is. The question though is regarding the mentorship program that many of us are currently in, right? I'm not seeing the possibility of us completing this e-portfolio.
Why aren't you seeing it as a possibility? The truth is, as we shared before, Denise, it seems like a very daunting task until you start it. It's a lot of work, and that is why it's an ongoing process. Okay, so you may not have everything listed here to include in your ePortfolio, but now you know what is expected, you can organize yourself accordingly to have samples of the different things involved. So we're not asking you to have everything that's listed here, but you must showcase some things that are present here. If you have all, that is excellent, but you continue to build as you go, okay?
Okay, so the understanding is that we upload what it is that we have currently,
Most definitely, and you add as you go along.
and we add as we go along. All right, thank you.
You're most welcome. All right, Mrs. Chambers Choir, I'm taking you, and then I continue. Well, it's just one more hand, so I'll squeeze it in. Go ahead, Mrs. Squire, and then Miss Martin.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Miss Rochelle.
Good afternoon.
My question is, if a teacher has been on, say, vacation leave for maybe 8 months out of the school year, how does that teacher addresses the issue of having lesson plans to upload for the year?
Well, if you are on leave, then there's nothing that you can really do. You just make a note that you were on leave and whatever evidence you have to provide for that. But you would have had lesson plans prior to going off on leave. And when you return, you would have had lesson plans as well. So you make a note. And if you want to make it more official, you can have your HOD or someone from administration verify that you were on leave, or if you were serving in a different capacity, you can also have them certify that or notarize that you were doing something else, etc. But you would have had plans prior to and after, so you can upload.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, go ahead, Ms. Martin, and then I will go to the ePortfolio.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My question is, I've started a portfolio hard copy. So I'm wondering, what should I do? Should I scan all my documents that I already have, because I have my philosophy and everything in that portfolio? Should I scan and upload, or should I start over a new portfolio? Because I already have one in a file jacket and everything already.
So the way forward is the ePortfolio as we are discussing now. So you can scan and definitely go ahead and add those to your ePortfolio. You can scan.
And may I add here, Mrs. Burrell, teachers, one of the things that I suggest that you do is to get the eye scanner on your phone. You don't have to go out and buy a scanner. The app on your phone works very well. It's very clean. Just try it out, download it and try it, and then you take it from there and accordingly. Yes.
And to add as well, Mrs. Wilmot, regarding applications, if you're using a Samsung, the Notes application allows you to scan as PDF as well. If you're using an iPhone, the Notes application does the same thing, and it's very clean as well. And you can actually add multiple pages, and it saves as one whole PDF document. So you don't have to scan single. So you have options. All right. Okay. All right, Anne-Marie Chinterson, Al-Marie, sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I know we mentioned appraisal and the whole situation as it relates to ePortfolio. Is it that each member will be required to do an ePortfolio every year, a separate portfolio each year?
No, that was a question that was asked earlier. No, you don't need a separate portfolio. It's one portfolio and you add to it each year.
You keep adding and changing as your plans.
Most definitely. You're welcome. All right, so before we run out of time, it's 2:50. I'm just going to go through my guiding principle number 1 and 2, and then quickly show you where to access Google Sites and how to start creating your ePortfolio. So on my guiding principle number 1, I just have my header telling us what guiding principle number 1 is, which is knowing the subject. And here I just showcase different images of activities that I would do in my class. So here we were looking at transporting plans. and just to show students that the water moves upward, right, and that the xylem is responsible. So we place the stem of a bougainvillea in the colored solution so they could actually see that it's traveling upwards, also using celery. So those were different things that I did. I also just compiled a short video showcasing what I do for my students and where I go to get resources, how I facilitate their learning in different ways. So that's what I did here, compiling different things, showing them what I do in my lessons, etc. And then I have YouTube videos showing that I engage my students outside of the classroom, that I'm knowledgeable of my subject area. I'm confident and competent in my subject area. These are resources that I would have developed for my students. So I would showcase the notes that I have created. So these are some examples of the notes that I create for my students. So these are just things that I showcase, right? So showing them the resources I developed, my lesson plans as well for the academic year, right? So I have my lesson plans. So these are the lesson plans for the different grade levels, all the grade levels that I teach. This one doesn't have grade 7, but I know currently teach grade 7 as well. So I put a calendar to showcase what happened when the COVID started here. I have class profiles. So if I'm absent, then whoever is going to sit in for me knows what my students are like, what happens, who have whatever needs, etc. So they will know how to deal with it accordingly. So these are class profiles, and then the actual lesson plans here, showcasing labs or whatever it is. Even if it's a lab, I still put it in a lesson plan format, and it goes all the way down to fifth form, the resources that we use in the lessons, etc. And then I have samples of students' work here. So this button is students' work with written feedback. So they got a worksheet, so that has written feedback on it. So it's added here, different pieces of work. This is the one with the written feedback and the student's name, etc. You can remove their names if you would like as well. These are students' portfolio that they flyers that they designed for a topic. We were looking at enzymes. They were asked to design a enzyme party flyer, so they had options. They could do websites or party flyers about an enzyme. So these were their ideas. This was static electricity students' work again, cells, the models of cells, and then I have my action plan. So I have 2 action plans. I use the one from the ministry. So I use the template provided from the ministry. And then I also have my specific action plan that speaks to specific targets within my lesson. So if I want to improve students' critical thinking and problem solving skills, and I specify what I'm going to be using, which is comprehension and experiential learning. So I look at who is responsible, what are the things that I need. And this action plan is a 2-year action plan. So it was from 2019 to 2020 to 2022, because this is something that I'm using to carry up my fourth form was all the way up to fifth form. So I just left it at 2 years, but your action plan timeline can be whatever you want it to be: 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Not recommended to go beyond 2 years. All right, and then evaluation. These are my class evaluations. So these are things that the students would have said, about the class, what we have done in class, how they feel about it, etc. So those are the different things that I have added to my guiding principle number 1. For guiding principle number 2, I have, because this is showing how you teach the subject. So I have I have class presentations and videos prior to COVID, and then I have recordings of my virtual classes when COVID came. And then these are different images that I have taken in my yard to just show students, or show what if I'm teaching pollination, if I'm teaching about classification, etc. I carry them outside. These are some of the images that we capture. These are ways I engage them outside of the classroom, on Instagram, on YouTube. allowing them to use real samples at home, or if we're at school, they take it to school. So real potatoes, if we're looking at vegetative propagation, students work here again, looking at experiential learning, carrying students on a field trip. This was actually a lab that they were doing, but not inside a lab. So they had the opportunity to collaborate. They had the opportunity to interact and think and research. They had specific worksheets for different groups, and then they all put those together. So we did this at Hope Garden. And of course, there's a lot more things that can be added to it. So it's a work in progress as we go along. All right. Any questions for me? Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am really amazed by what I'm seeing here. It's actually the first time that I'm coming into, well, I shouldn't say come into contact, but it's the first time I'm hearing about e-journals, and I'm so fascinated by what I'm seeing.
Oh, thank you.
However, we use Microsoft Teams, and I'm wondering if if it will facilitate the creating of an e-journal the same way as you would have explained, because well, in our system, we've never been told about e-journals, or we have to do e-journals or anything like that. This is just me being invited to your session by another member in your session. So how do I, if I am interested in creating this e-journal, would I be able to do it the same way using the Microsoft Teams, which is the platform that we use?
I am not 100% sure if Microsoft has the accommodation for that. They might. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But as I said before, you're not limited to the Google sites. It's just recommended in terms of, you know, if you decide to apply for master teacher, or simply just to communicate in the ministry's perspective. So that's something that we can explore. I am not sure if Microsoft facilitates that, but I'll definitely explore that and check it out. But you're not limited to Google sites, as we said before.
Thank you.
May I also add, Mrs. Burrell, good afternoon, that even if you're not using, if you're using Microsoft, remember you can always share the link, because once you create it, you can just share the link from the site. So it is good to learn, and it might not be mandatory, but you also want to have evidence of your work. As we're seeing at the council, there's so many excellent teachers who are doing great work, but they're not documenting. So this is a beautiful way to document your work, your videos, and just about everything that you're doing in your space.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm just looking up the Microsoft thing as we speak, but we can talk about that afterwards. Marshana, go ahead.
What computer skills might be useful in making this job easy?
Computer skills?
Or not, you know? Is there anything you would recommend that we sharpen up on to assist us in making, like, whether submitting our videos or what, or is it just easy to get it done?
All right, so I'm going to show you where you can go to start setting up your e-portfolio. All right, I'll show you that in just a short moment. Let me just take at least 3 more hands, and then we get right into that, okay? All right, go ahead, Bevine.
I was just about to take it down because the same question was asked and you mentioned that you will show us. That's what I wanted to know.
Yes, no problem. Go ahead, Judith. Missy Banks, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to know if you recommend the use of subpages. For example, where you have the lesson plans, if you could have a sub-page on the guiding principle one.
Oh,
that
sure,
you
most
would-
definitely. You can organize your page how you want to. Most definitely, you can.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, because I have sub pages here for the home page. I just didn't put any sub pages here, but you can have sub pages if you want to make it a lot more organized. You can. All right, Karen Bailey, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this comprehensive presentation. A similar question to the one just now. I see here on yours, you have guiding principles as your headings. I did not use those as my headings. Is it compulsory that we list them as guiding principle one, guiding principle two, and so forth? Is that compulsory?
No, it's not, but it's just easier in terms of, if for navigation purposes, so we know exactly what principles. If you're using it as an appraisal document, etc., it's much easier to identify it this way. But it's not compulsory.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Tamara, go ahead.
Good afternoon again, colleagues. My question is really about storage because I've experienced just using Google Drive that in a minute we do run out of storage. In terms of us updating constantly an ePortfolio by the sites, does it take us there eventually to be either buying into space or storage or asking us to upgrade storage?
The site, no, but if your file is too large, it will not allow you to upload it. So for example, if it is my recommendation, if you plan to upload videos or those things, it's best to create a YouTube channel. You can always make it private and you add the links from the YouTube channel. That's what I did for guiding principle number one. So this video is private, but only those who have access to this link will be able to see it. And it actually allows you to not having to worry about when you share it for grading purposes, if persons can't have access, etc. So having this video on YouTube and putting the link here, that helps with storage. Also, if you have large PDF files, you can use the PDF compressor online to compress your PDF files if they're too large. So you have different alternatives to make sure that you don't exceed their storage. All right. All right, go ahead. It's Duhaney, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. What I wanted to ask is for the evidence that we're supposed to put under each guiding principle, for example, samples of students' work, is there a limit as in how much we should put?
No, that's where your selection skills come in. You select the ones that you want to put up. You don't have to put them all.
So any amount, 3, 5, any amount?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
So you decide on what you deem as appropriate to represent you as an excellent educator.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to pause with the questions at this time to just quickly showcase, because it's a little after 3 and we don't really want to go too much over time or any at all over time. So I am currently in my Google Drive. I would assume we all know how to get to our Google Drive. So these are the sample folders I created. There's nothing in them. These were just folders created to showcase how you can organize your files in your Google Drive prior to adding them to your ePortfolio. So let's look at how to create our ePortfolio. So you can right click. When you right click in your Drive space, you can now go to more. After you pass these things, you go to more. Then can you see my screen, by the way, everybody? Yes?
Yes.
All right, okay, thank you. All right, so you go to more and then you go to Google Sites. Once you click on Google Sites, it automatically starts to generate a site for you. This is the site that you have here. So it gives you your home page, basically, right? So you can do all the necessary fancy afterwards. The important thing is organizing your files in your Drive so that when you are ready to organize them here, you can. I would encourage that we start with pages. So I'm going to go to well, sorry, before we get to pages, give your site a title. And of course, that title would be your name. So you put your name. And then of course, you can put a colon and say ePortfolio. So you know exactly what the site is about, because you may use Google Sites for other things. So you give your site a name, and then once you give your site a name, you can then go ahead and go to pages. So you start organizing your pages so that you know which ones to add. So you have your home page here. You can add new pages, which is the plus sign down here. Once you click on the plus sign and you are prompted for a new page, you give the new page a title. So I'm just going to put GP1 for short. You can write it out if you would like. And you go ahead, and I keep adding my pages for all the things that I need to add to my portfolio. For those who asked about adding a sub page, to add the sub page, after you create the full new page, you go to the triple icons here, which is your action menu. You click on it and you are able to see the options here. You can duplicate the page. You can add a sub page. You can make it your home page, whatever you decide. We're focusing on adding it as a sub page. So I click add sub page. You're prompted to give your sub page a title. So my sub page here would be lesson plan, as someone asked earlier. So lesson plans, and I can identify that as 2020 to 2021 lesson plans. Okay, in case I want to add more lesson plans for different years. So you can do it like that, and you can keep adding sub pages. Let's say I want to add my action plan as a sub page here. I just put action plan, and then that's it. Then I go ahead, I want to add a new page. So I'm going to go back to the plus sign, and I'm just going to say GP number 2, and that would be my second page. And that's what I'll do. And you keep adding all your guiding principles. So I suggest when you go to create your site, give it a title, give it your name, and then add all the pages. You can always edit the pages afterwards, but make sure the way you add the pages on your site, that you organize them like that in your drive. So when you are ready to upload to the site, everything is already organized in folders. So you're not all over the place, looking all over the place. So you keep your drive organized. So this is my drive for my actual portfolio. So these are my folders. So I know exactly where to look for the things when I'm uploading them. So you can look at your philosophy, your resume, everything that you need to put on your portfolio, just organize them in your drive prior to, for those that you cannot organize. If you're using YouTube links, then you know that would be on YouTube, etc. So you go ahead and you organize them. Then you are able to add and upload them. So it's really reflecting and organizing, collecting the things that you need. Then you can think about designing the page, because you would have put in all the work already regarding collecting the data and artifacts that you need. All right. So I see St. John's Infant. Go ahead. All right, I'm not hearing from St. John's Infant. All right, is it Lucretia Pinnock? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right.
Good afternoon, St. John's.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I would like to know, since this e-portfolio is just coming in and teachers are getting used to it and just adding things, some of the things we might not be able to find right now to add. Is it fair to be using this for our appraisal?
Well, that's the administrative's decision. So if you have other ways to showcase your evidence, then it's up to your administration. But this is the direction we're going in terms of saying that your e-portfolio links to the appraisal document, in case schools utilize it as your appraisal evidence. So we're not mandating that you must have it now, but it's sensitizing you to the process. So should in case we get to that place, or when we get to that place, you would have been prepared for it. All right, Francine, go ahead. Francine. All right, I'm not hearing Francine. Go ahead, Claudine.
All right, good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. Go ahead.
All right, so based on the demonstration of how you can create your portfolio, I did not get how you have reached here. I did not get that part, so I don't know if it is possible or if the time will allow you to just go through.
Are you familiar with Google Drive?
Yes, I am familiar with Google Drive.
Good. So once you are in Google Drive, you would right click. Once you right click, you go to more, and then you are able to see sites, and it will take you to a page like this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Go ahead, Shellyan. Or Shellyan, yes. Go ahead, Shellyan.
Okay, Miss, good afternoon. That insert button that you have beside page, that is what you're going to use to upload the things from the Google Drive, or
that's right.
What is it?
So when you go to after you create all your pages, the insert button is what you use to add the content now. So you can add from your drive, you can add directly from YouTube here. Maps, Google Docs, these are buttons. So the button here is what you use to put a link in. So for example, my portfolio, these blue buttons that you see, these are links that will take you to different things in my drive. So instead of adding it directly from the drive, I can also use the link button, which takes them directly to the file.
Okay.
Or any other website that you may have information or resources on, you can put the link here.
Okay.
No problem.
Anything else you need to tell me about that insert button?
This, as in the link, or just this insert up
Yeah,
here?
the navigation of it.
Well, it's right here, you know, so you can play around with it. So this is not really the tutorial session, but most definitely the insert button allows you to insert text box. You can play around with it. You're not gonna get it all in one go, as just sensitizing you to it now, because tomorrow, God's willing, you will have the time to go through and actually design your site. So we're not having a presentation session tomorrow. We're giving you tomorrow. And at this time, I'll take the opportunity as well to ask for volunteers to come and work on their sites together, you know, trial and error going through. So if you are interested, tomorrow is the day that you will have available to start creating your site. So we're giving you tomorrow as that day. You're most welcome. All right, so we will spend more time on this tomorrow. So I just want to know, you know, how comfortable are we with the information and all those things. So certainly tomorrow will be the day that you can ask your questions regarding the creation of the site. All right. D. Watson, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I created my e-portfolio with just as what you said, but I use my Ministry of Education account. And what happened when I'm supposed to submit it now, send it to my supervisor, to another Ministry of Education account, Gmail account, that they could not access it. Neither were they able to access it when I send it to a personal Gmail account.
So you may now need to adjust your sharing settings. So the plus icon here, you need to adjust the sharing settings and the files that you have added from your drive. So let me start with the drive first, quickly. Let me do that briefly. So when you are sharing files from your drive, you have to make sure that it's accessible. Now it's recommended that you use your personal email to organize your ePortfolio, because if you should leave an institution, let's say you have an email at institutionx.com, you left that institution and you are now at Z. Is it that you will lose everything that you have? So you want to keep your files organized in your personal drive so that anywhere at all you go, you have access to it to put on your ePortfolio. All right. So when you go to your sharing settings here, you want to make sure that anyone with the link can view. So instead of sharing it to individual persons, if it is that you have completed it and published it for grading or assessment, you go to the restricted icon here, change to anyone with the link can view. And I'm going to also show you something that's very important after you change that. So I have changed the folder to be like that. So everything inside that folder will be able to be viewed by whomever is assessing the file. Now, something
So
very...
weren't hearing you at some point. Sorry about that. Weren't hearing you at some point. When you go to the section where you found the sharing part where you have to identify who you want to see. You jumped out a bit with the voice.
Okay, are you seeing my screen still? Hearing me better?
Yes, I am now.
Okay, so you go to all right, let me just go back here. Okay, so when you go to the share, when you right click to share, you see restricted. You can change that to anyone with the link can view, and then you click done. But the documents inside this folder, there's something important that I'm going to show you now. So even though anyone with the link can view the document, you also want to make sure that they don't have access to share it and download it, if it is something that you don't want to be sent all over. So you right click again and you go to share for the individual files within that folder. You go to the settings icon at the top and you make sure to check off these boxes. So even if you make someone else an editor, they cannot share the file. You can also change it that viewers and commenters, they don't have the option to download, print, or copy your work.
Okay.
So that's something that we have to note. And I learned this long after my creation. So I'm just sharing it with you in terms of privacy settings. All right. And you can do the same thing with your portfolio link. You can do the same thing at the top. So the same sharing settings here, you can do the same thing with this one to change this, to check off the box. So they cannot publish or make any changes to your site or add new people to it. So those are some privacy concerns that you might want to consider regarding your ePortfolio. Okay. You're welcome. All right, so it's 3:18. We don't want to go beyond 3:30, to be honest. That's even too far because I know you all have other things to get done. All right, so I'm going to take Marshana. Go ahead. Marshana, are you there?
Yes, thank you for unmuting. I wanted to know, you mentioned that we should have all the different guiding principles organized before we start. So
it's recommended.
So how many guiding principles again?
There are 6 guiding principles.
Okay, so we set up those 6 and then we fill them in as time goes by.
That's right. And you can find the samples of what should be in each guiding principle on the JTC's website.
So we would have subcategories under all of that, under guiding 1, guiding 2, and so forth.
If you want to have sub pages, yes, or you can have them on one page. It's up to you and how you organize it.
Okay. So finally, as time goes on and you might realize you left out something, can you add?
It's your portfolio, most definitely.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, I'm just calling some names now. I'm just jumping over some people, to be honest. Marie, go ahead. Wilson McLaughlin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, presenter. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
I know it
afternoon.
might have been said, but forgive me for not hearing. I know that we're all going to be creating our e-portfolios. However, is this a specific requirement of the course? So that is, do we need to create one for submission as a requirement of the course?
This course you're talking, this training session?
Yes.
Well, we are guiding you in the process of creating it for those who have not created it. And for certification and competence, we would like to know that you're able to do so.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, I would imagine, having seen the number of participants in the session, that we're not all serving at the same places in our institutions.
That's
so
right.
while we're using a particular appraisal instrument, based on where we are, am I supposed to imagine then that we would be creating our e-portfolios to match using a framework that matches our particular appraisal instrument?
Yes, but there is a standard appraisal instrument that we have at the JTC. It's on the website that all schools should be sensitized to by now at this time.
There are several appraisal instruments actually.
I was going to respond to that, Mrs. Burrell.
Sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Wilma. Thank you.
Right. I was going to respond to that to say that, yes. So if, for example, you're a vice principal, then you will not be using the one for the teacher. If you're you use the one that's applicable to your post. Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilma.
Right. So the one that Mrs. Burrell is now using is the
So
one.
you would have answered my questions.
Right. So look for the appraisal that's applicable to your post, and you do your e-portfolio accordingly, whether you're a principal, vice principal, master teacher, that's the one that you use. So you might, to the guiding principles that you're using must be relevant to your appraisal.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Burrell, you.
All right, thank you for responding. Thank you. All right, I'm seeing Galaxy J7. I'm not sure who that is.
And we'll before we close.
I didn't hear you, Mrs. Wilmot.
Right. So last question before we close. Just to say, teachers, that tomorrow we're going to be meeting same time for 1 hour. We want to keep the sessions 1 hour. I mean, everybody's suffering from screen time and all of that. We don't want to exhaust you, and the law of diminishing return sets in where you're losing more than you're gaining. So let's keep these sessions to the 1 hour. Tomorrow, we're asking you to come on. What we're going to do is to practice today what we learned, tomorrow what we learned today in terms of building the site. Come prepared to make mistake. Come prepared to just go on and say, let me volunteer, start creating my site and others help. We want you to be at that place where you're vulnerable to grow. All right. So the last question, we'll accommodate Mrs. Burrell, and then we're going to close off until tomorrow at 2 p.m. And we go right until Friday, 1 hour sessions. Go ahead, Mrs. Burrell.
Thank you. All right. I think it was Galaxy J7 that I was calling. Are you able to hear me? All right, I'm not hearing Galaxy J7, so I'll take the last question. M. Casanova.
Thank you. Could you repeat something that you said? I missed out on a part of it. You said that we should create our work in our personal, could you fill in the blank here for me? In the event that we move on to another institution, we would have access to our work.
So your e-portfolio, I'm saying your drive that you organize your files in, you can use your personal email to do that. So you will always have access to your work.
Okay, your personal email.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying. We are 24 minutes over time. I really do apologize for that, but I really wanted to accommodate your questions. Over to you, Mrs. Wilmot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Burrell. And just to say that Mrs. Burrell is one of our trained mentors doing an excellent job. Tomorrow, again, I invite you to come and continue the work that she has started by doing your practice. Can't thank you enough, Mrs. Harris Burrell, for making the time to really just help our teachers to continue to grow and our educators in general. So on Wednesday, we're going to be continuing with guiding principles 3 and 4, and we go right until Friday when we finish this course. Just to say that at the end of it, for you to be certifiable there, to be certified, we want to ensure that you are putting in practice what you've learned. So there are some things that we'll ask you to do, and it's an option if you want to be certified for this, of course, meaning that you can come, you don't have to do the tasks that we are going to be assigning, but it would be good if you do that, because what we want is for you to really just continue to grow as we seek to elevate the education system. Because remember that you're a teacher leader, you're leaders in your space, and everything rises and falls on leadership. So I want to encourage you to ensure that you are being the leader where you are by growing and lifting others as you climb. And with that, I want to say good afternoon, everyone. Good to have you. And we look forward to having you tomorrow with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.